Welcome to History for Nap Time. Today, we'll be traveling back over 2,000 years into the world of ancient Greece, a society that gave us philosophers, poets, mathematicians, and also some of the first organized fitness training systems in human history. The Greeks believed that training the body was just as important as training the mind. In this episode, we'll explore how they exercised, what equipment they used, where they trained, and why fitness played such a central role in their lives. So sit back, relax, and let's slowly wander through the gymnasiums, arenas, and fields of ancient Greece. The Greeks had a word, arete, meaning excellence. Excellence wasn't only about being clever or brave. It also meant having a body that was strong, balanced, and beautiful. For them, the human body was almost sacred. If you've seen Greek statues, perfectly carved muscles, calm expressions, you've seen their vision of the ideal form. They believed physical training made a person more disciplined, more capable in war, and more attractive to the gods. From childhood, boys were taught that a sound mind lived best in a sound body. This belief set the foundation for all of their workouts. When we hear the word gymnasium today, we think of treadmills, rows of weights, and machines with pulleys and cables. But in ancient Greece, the gymnasium was something far grander and far more central to daily life. The very word gymnasium comes from the Greek gymnos, meaning naked. And indeed, the athletes of ancient Greece trained without clothing, seeing it as a sign of respect for the human body and as a way of honoring the gods who had granted them strength and beauty. For the Greeks, nudity was not shameful. It was natural, even noble. A gymnasium was not simply a room or a hall. It was a sprawling, open-air complex. Imagine wide, sandy courtyards, surrounded by marble columns, with olive trees planted in neat rows to offer shade. At one end, a running track. At another, areas for wrestling or discus practice. And in the shaded colonnades, men gathered to talk. This is where Greek culture shows its unique balance. The gymnasium was both a training ground for the body and a meeting place for the mind. Famous philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle all spent time in gymnasiums, discussing ideas while athletes trained nearby. In fact, Plato's very name comes from his broad shoulders. His nickname, Platon, meant wide. So while one group of men ran laps in the sun, others debated ethics and politics in the shade. Young boys were instructed not only in athletics, but in poetry, music, and philosophy. To be educated in Greece was to train both sides of yourself, body and mind. The gymnasium was also deeply social. It was a place where citizens of a city-state gathered, forming bonds that were as important as the muscles they developed. Aristocrats, soldiers, and ordinary men shared the same sand, the same coaches, the same olive oil to prepare their skin. If you stood in a gymnasium in Athens around 400 BC, you would see a world alive with activity. Wrestlers practicing holds, runners jogging laps, men playing ball games, and in the corner, a philosopher surrounded by eager students, all listening intently as the smell of olive oil and dust filled the air. The gymnasium was a true symbol of the Greek ideal, harmony between body, intellect, and community. Before beginning their exercises, Greeks warmed up carefully. They would rub their bodies with olive oil to protect the skin, then dust themselves lightly with sand to improve grip and prevent slipping. A typical warm-up included stretching, gentle running, and light movements with weights called halteres, small stone or metal dumbbells. This prepared the muscles for more serious training ahead. Running was at the heart of Greek training. The earliest Olympic event, in 776 BC, was simply a sprint down the length of the stadium. They had several types of races. The stadion, a short sprint, the dialos, twice as long, and the dolichos, a long-distance endurance run. Training for these involved repeated sprints, steady jogging, and interval-style exercises. Running wasn't just about speed. It built stamina for soldiers and grace for athletes. Imagine dozens of young men running barefoot on sand tracks under the Mediterranean sun. Among all the exercises practiced in ancient Greece, wrestling, or pale, stood out as one of the most prestigious. To wrestle was to test yourself not only in strength, but in control, endurance, and cunning. Two athletes would face one another on a sandy training ground. There was no ring, no ropes, no mats, just open space and a circle drawn in the dirt. Victory came when one man threw the other to the ground 3 times. There were no weight classes. A small but clever wrestler could outsmart a much larger opponent. Greek wrestling was considered so noble that it was included in the original Olympic Games. Boys practiced it from an early age, learning techniques passed down from teachers called paidotribes. These instructors drilled them in grips, throws, and escapes until the moves became second nature. But wrestling was more than a sport. It was also preparation for war. Greek soldiers, the famous hoplites, fought in close ranks. If their spear or shield was lost, combat became a struggle of grappling and survival. Wrestling trained them to stay calm when grabbed, to use leverage rather than raw power, and to control their breathing in the midst of chaos. Alongside wrestling came 2 other combat sports, boxing and pankration. Boxing was brutal. No padded gloves, just leather straps around the fists. Matches could last for hours, sometimes ending only when one fighter collapsed from exhaustion. Pankration went even further, a mixture of wrestling and boxing with almost no rules. Fighters could punch, kick, grapple, and choke. Only biting and eye gouging were forbidden. To win in pankration was to show absolute mastery over another man. The stories of legendary fighters filled Greek culture. One of the most famous was Milo of Croton, a wrestler who became almost mythical for his strength. He was said to train by carrying a calf on his shoulders every day. As the calf grew into a bull, Milo grew stronger, until he could carry the full-grown animal himself. Whether fact or exaggeration, the story reflects the Greek admiration for strength earned through discipline and persistence. Training sessions were as much about patience as about power. Wrestlers drilled throws slowly, then at full speed. They learned to fall without injury, to conserve energy, to read an opponent's stance. Coaches taught them that brute force would not always win. Clever technique and composure mattered just as much. If you watched a wrestling match in ancient Olympia, you would not see wild chaos. Instead, you'd see calculated movements, bursts of strength, and athletes who looked almost like statues in motion. The Greeks admired the art of wrestling because it showed control of the body and of the will. To build strength, the Greeks used their own creative tools. They lifted halteres, stone or bronze weights. They practiced jumping while swinging these weights, improving both legs and arms. They carried heavy objects, like shields and stones, to mimic the weight of armor. Some accounts describe athletes doing bodyweight exercises, push-ups, squats, and rope climbing, all without the modern machines we see today. Their goal was practical strength, the kind that could win a contest or keep you alive in war. Not every workout was serious. The Greeks also enjoyed playful games, like a form of field hockey, and ball games that built coordination. These lighter activities balanced out the harder training, just as we might play casual sports today. Training wasn't done alone. The Greeks had instructors called paidotribes, who taught wrestling, running, and exercises. They also had gymnasts, who oversaw the athletes' programs and helped prepare them for competition. These early coaches believed in moderation. Too much training could harm the body, just as much as too little. After a long session of training, athletes in ancient Greece did not simply walk away and return to their homes. Recovery was as important to them as exercise itself. When training was finished, the athletes used a tool called a strigil. This was a curved piece of bronze or iron, shaped a little like a small sickle. Covered in olive oil and dust from the training ground, their skin would be sticky and hot. The strigil scraped away the mixture, cleaning the body while stimulating circulation. It was not only practical, it was refreshing. Bathing followed. Some gymnasiums had small pools, others used clay jars of water. Cold baths were especially common, believed to harden the body and prevent fatigue. For wealthier athletes or those in larger cities, communal bathhouses became a place of relaxation and conversation, much like the gymnasium itself. Food also played a key role. A Greek athlete's diet was simple but nourishing. Bread, barley porridge, olives, cheese, figs, and fish formed the staples. Meat was not as common as today, but for Olympic champions, richer diets were sometimes adopted, including beef or goat to build strength. Wine was consumed, but carefully. The Greeks always diluted it with water. Drinking undiluted wine was seen as barbaric. Moderation was the rule, in food and in drink. Philosophers even wrote about diet and exercise. The physician Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, spoke about the importance of balance. Too much exercise could exhaust the body, just as too much food could weigh it down. But taken together, exercise, diet, and rest produced harmony. Sleep was valued as the ultimate recovery. Athletes needed to be well rested to train again the next day. In Greek literature, sleep is often described as a gentle healer, a gift from the gods. To lie down after training, with muscles still warm and the sound of cicadas in the distance, must have been one of life's quiet pleasures in ancient Greece. In this way, recovery was never neglected. The Greeks may not have had modern sports science, but they understood a timeless truth, that strength grows not just in the effort of training, but in the calm that follows. All this training came together in the great athletic festivals, especially the Olympic Games. Competing wasn't only about winning prizes. It was about honor, representing your city, and pleasing the gods. Victorious athletes became celebrities. Statues were built in their likeness. Poets sang their names. But even those who never competed lived in a culture where fitness was a daily part of life. So what can we learn from ancient Greece? That exercise wasn't just about health. It was about community, discipline, and philosophy. For the Greeks, training body and mind went hand in hand. Perhaps that's why, thousands of years later, we're still inspired by their ideals. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the gymnasiums of ancient Greece. This has been History for Nap Time. May your mind feel calmer and your imagination a little stronger after today's story.